All right, so I will start. Hopefully we will hear or see John soon. It's the appointed time to start the meeting and a quorum is present. I believe we are ready to begin the meeting.
Yes.
And Tyler, I'm reading your sheet. It just pulled up. Does someone have the land acknowledgement agreement that they could read for us? Please?
Sorry, Chris, I just sent it to you, but I can read it. I would like to acknowledge the ancestral, cultural, traditional, and unceded territory of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Northern Paiute people on which we are meeting today.
Thank you very much. And I am pulling up the agenda also. Sorry about this, guys. Also want to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Does anyone have any questions? Do I have a motion to pass?
I motion we pass the minutes.
A second.
All right, that has been passed. And we do confirm the minutes from their last meeting, and we will go into the agenda.
Tyler, do you need to call a vote? Does she need to call a vote on the minutes?
So. The motion would be to approve the minutes. I believe we've rearranged the order of the. Agenda though, to have the presentation informational item first. So we can bring up, we can have our motion on the minutes afterwards. If you'd like.
Okay, so let's go ahead with our presentation from Steve Burgos. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
You did, thank you. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Steve Burgos. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Boise. And today I wanted to talk about our Public Works Arts Master Plan, and less necessarily about the plan. I want to give you some background on what is Public Works, kind of what we do, to provide some context to the plan as we move forward. Could you go to the next slide? Sorry. Or I can take the keyboard.
Yeah, thank you.
So what we'll cover today is, I'll just give you a high-level public works overview. We'll talk about some of our near-term priorities related to water renewal and to climate. Those are two pressing priorities that we'll talk more about. And then at the end, just talk about the integration of the Public Works Arts Master Plan. And I just want to have a discussion with the commission more than anything. I'll provide some observations and maybe some comments, and then I just want to hear from you all. I understand that you were given copies of the plan to review. Hopefully you had a chance to look through it. And I'm just curious to hear from your perspective, you know, what about the plan intrigues you? Are there any concerns? Because we're about to launch here in the next probably couple of months, starting to actually implement the plan, which I'm really excited about. Tilly and I were just talking before the meeting about, like, how do we want to start this? And I don't know yet, but I am excited about the possibilities. So let's just jump right in. So I want to start with just some philosophical discussions about kind of where we are as a city, public works, how we view what the future is going to hold, and what we're trying to embrace as a department that then hopefully will impact the community. Most cities, all cities, have been set up historically to be a linear metabolism city. So we acquire something, we use it, and then we waste it, right? So as this process has been set up in cities that for time immemorial, when we urbanized, this process started happening. And this is not a very sustainable process, right? You can imagine that there are probably some things that we ought to be considering that starts to reset some of this. In public works, we've been talking a lot about not just sustainable cities, but what are regenerative cities? What do they look like? And how do you start to create a regenerative kind of thought process around what a public works or what infrastructure can provide to a city? And so we've been thinking about, honestly, how do you break some of this? How do you start to get away from this kind of tried and true urban cycle? And what we're thinking about is how do we get better at moving towards a circular metabolism? This is not like revelatory, the circular economy, you've all heard that phrase before, but it is different for city planning. It is different for environmental planning at a city scale. And I'll just point to, we have those ends, and what we're starting to look at the city of Boise is how do we start to get into these local cycles of organic material, local cycle of energy, local cycle of water, local cycle of materials. What we think will happen and what we suspect will happen is that will lead to less pollution, less waste. That will allow us to accomplish certain goals that we have. And I'll share with you some of the bigger goals that we have, one of which is to be carbon neutral by 2050. One of the coolest things that is happening or has happened in Boise is that we have a very strong foundation in those four that I have up there. And there's other kind of ways that we can look at it, other categories. Those are four that I chose. The local cycle of organic material, we have a large compost program. You all, the citizens of Boise, are awesome. There's a 97% participation rate in our organics program, residential organics program. We have, how many of you all know that we own and operate a farm, a 4,300 acre farm? So we own a farm, we apply the biosolids from the water renewal facilities, and they are what you think they are, the biosolids, and we land apply those, and we grow local crops. We take all the revenue from the farm to offset the rates, so hopefully it keeps downward pressure on rates long term. The local cycle of energy, we have the nation's largest geothermal system downtown, direct use geothermal system. That is fundamentally circular. We pull it out of the aquifer, we take the heat off, and we inject it back in the same aquifer, and thus starts to loop all over again. The local cycle of water, I'll talk to you about a little bit about a recycled water program that we're starting in partnership with Micron Technologies. We just had the pilot equipment delivered 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 3 weeks ago. I'll talk a little bit about that, but that's starting to get at recycling wastewater because we know that water is a finite resource and we know drought conditions are coming. I'll share with you some information about a climate assessment that we did. And then the local cycle of materials, the ability to take these materials that you get, the plastics, the 3 through 7 plastics. We're working with a company called Biofusion, and they take those orange energy bags, if you participate in that program, and they're making basically building blocks out of it. It's like big Lego blocks. But they have like they're meeting eight ASTM standards, kind of really technical mechanical standards for getting approval for use in buildings, whether it's like a park bench that we have a demonstration project on Manitou Park with the Biofusion 5 blocks they call it. But that's potentially a project where they're a company out of LA, but because we have the Orange Energy Bag programs here in Boise, they're thinking about locating their first large scale manufacturing. So here in Boise. So we're making progress. We have a strong foundation. There is a lot of work to be done. And I'll share with you the plans that we have moving forward and some of the progress. All of that leading to that carbon neutrality by 2050. So let's just talk a little bit about public works. I'll read you our mission statement. We take this very seriously. We talk about how do we integrate this into decision making, and underneath this are level of service criteria that we have developed. But the mission of public works is to use our resources effectively and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community, leaving a legacy of enhanced quality of life. That we do this work in any number of instances, any number of examples. So, for example, we own and operate the water renewal system. So, JJ, you were part of our advisory group back in the day for the utility plan that I'll talk a little bit about. The water renewal system is the city's largest single asset. We have about 1,000 miles of pipe running underneath the city streets that's moving wastewater from point A to point B. We have 5 major facilities that take all of that wastewater and treat it to a very high level and put it back in the waste river. If we were to try to replace this system today, in today's dollar, about $3 billion in assets. So it is a big system, it's complex, it's expensive, going through a lot of replacement of aging assets. Talk a little bit about that as part of the utility. But that's one of the ways that we provide and meet that mission for the community, keeping raw sewage out of the river, which was not always the case. The 40s, up until like about the mid-40s, we're putting raw sewage in this river. Another thing that we do, we'll talk a little bit about the Curvin program, some of the recycling programs that we have. So we have the compost program. We have the recycling, both for plastics and paper. We also have glass recycling. Household hazardous waste program. We're the first city in the US to have the energy bag program offered to all citizens at scale citywide. Participate, we have about a 20% participation rate in the energy bag program. And of course, we run the trash program. So this is a 24/7 every day operation that we're running both for commercial and residential material management. And then I mentioned the geothermal system. There we go. We have the nation's largest geothermal system. It started in the 80s as a demonstration project. We got a grant from the Department of Energy back then to build the initial system. And we have grown this out to be about 95 buildings now downtown, about 6 million square feet that we heat in the wintertime. It's a really interesting system. There's elegance in the simplicity. It's literally taking hot water, moving into a building, they take the heat off, take the water back, and that's it. This is such an important part of our future downtown in particular, because this gives us an alternative to carbon-based fuel. With natural gas, this is an alternative to that. And so we're thinking about ways to expand it. We just had a geothermal design sprint where we got into like ideas around really kind of big picture, interesting ideas on how we could use the system differently. So. And then last but not least are the climate action pieces. And this is fairly new to Public Works as of probably about 4 or 5 years ago. We house the climate action division within Public Works. And we have over the past several years developed very specific plans, very technical plans to achieve the goals you see here. 100% clean electricity by 2030 for city operations, city government operations, and then 2035 carbon neutrality for city government. So those two first, and then we move on to the community. And we do that by design. If we're going to ask the citizens to do these things or be a part of these solutions, we feel pretty strongly about us doing it first and showing both leadership, but hopefully we'll learn lessons that we can share with the community. Like, don't do this, that didn't work very well. But we would recommend doing this. So you can see those goals, and those are fairly aggressive goals, and we're proud of those. My boss is very big on aspirational goals and me trying to be aggressive when we try to set these kind of standards, these goals that are out there, to the point where she would like to see 100% clean electricity for city operations by this year. We're working with Idaho Power on how best to do that. We have a potential for maybe getting a portion of it done in 2023. We're working on that. It's somewhat confidential, but we're working. So those are just like, we could spend a lot of time on a lot of the stuff that we do in Public Works, but there's all these other things that we also do. We do all the construction for the city. So when we build a new fire station, that's Public Works. We design and build that. We do all the utility billing for the city. So all of the bills that you receive and graciously pay, thank you, comes to utility billing here at the city. And I won't read all those. There's just a lot of moving parts in Public Works. But it's really fun. And I feel like in many ways, we're in a golden era for Public Works. Because there is an acknowledgement of the work that's happening on our own part. That's what sounds maybe silly, but for many years, for many decades, we liked being behind the scenes, and if we weren't talked about, we were good to go, right? Nobody's asking any questions, nobody's noticing what we do. That was good. We can't be that way anymore, because what we're being asked to do, which in turn makes us ask the citizens to provide funding to us, is still significant. We have to better explain to them what it is that we're doing. So the days of us being behind the scenes, out of sight, out of mind are behind us. The integration of systems now are going to be such an interesting part of our future. We were just talking about, maybe future art pieces. We could work with the airport and maybe road systems and try to develop some pieces that try to frame on a daily basis. We all wake up, you interact with all of these major systems. You take a shower, you take a drink of water, you use the roads, you turn on the lights. There's all of these systems that exist out in our communities, these infrastructure systems that interact in really interesting ways that we'd like to start to emphasize, because those are the things that are going to help us address climate issues, frankly. The better that we can leverage those systems and how they interact. Okay, near-term priorities. Back in 2020, the council passed the Water Renewal Utility Plan, a very significant achievement, I would say, because it sets the direction for the next 20 years for water renewal. And we are committed to, and I'll share with you information about recycling water in Boise. It'll be the first time that we're attempting to do it. It's not very common in Idaho. It's more common in Texas, Arizona, and California. But we recognize the need to start recycling water. And that was the utility plan has a lot of moving parts to talk about, but the biggest is the recycling water. And then back in 2021, we also got council to approve our climate action roadmap. Those two documents start to frame up the bigger picture vision for those two priorities, water renewal and for climate. There's other things certainly that we're working on, lots of other things, but those are two kind of big picture priorities that when I think about the Public Works Arts Master Plan, those are two priorities that I really want to engage the public in. And I'll talk a little bit about how I think we've failed somewhat, not you all, us all in Public Works, in describing and engaging on climate issues. So the utility plan, just very quickly, we have the existing system I've already talked about. That system is aging out. A big part of the investment that we have to make is just replacing these old systems. The Lander Street facility was built in the late 40s, 70 years old. It needs replaced. That's a $300 some million proposition over the next 20 years. So big dollars and complex projects that are the basis of the utility plan. But I did mention the new things that we're up to, and that's the recycled water program, this third facility, industrial recycled water. We're partnering with Micron. I'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to start recharging the aquifer with that recycled water to help augment water supplies. About 75% of our drinking water comes from groundwater. We're going to look to enhance, we call it enhancing the river. Climate change is starting to impact river systems pretty significantly. You've probably seen some of the issues on the Columbia River with the high temperatures and that had salmon kills on the Columbia River just based on the temperature of the water. We're no different. We're starting to see those impacts on the Boise River. We're impaired for temperature. We would like to start pursuing projects up and down the river to help address some of those water quality issues with natural solutions rather than mechanical solutions at the end of a pipe at a treatment plant. It's not the best thing. And then in the future, we'll need a fourth facility. So as we continue to grow the city, we're committed to recycled water. These new facilities we're bringing on, all the new capacity will be focused on recycling wastewater. So that's really high level on the utility plan. Let's move over to the climate side. And back in 2016, we worked with Dr. John Abatsoglu up at the University of Idaho, and he helped us develop, he ran like 24 different climate models because we wanted to get a sense for specific in Boise, what are we going to be dealing with? What are some of the issues that are somewhat unique to us? That list is not necessarily unique to us, but they are a list that we expect to see here in Boise. I won't read all those to you, but they start to frame up for us areas that we ought to start planning around. So the drought frequency is going to increase. That's one of the reasons that we're starting to drive towards a recycled water program. In effect, recycled water is drought-proof water. You all are going to be using water to take showers every day. So we're going to always be getting that wastewater. If we can recycle it, it's virtually drought-proof at that point. So the climate adaptation assessment set the foundation for the issues that we think we're going to have to address. And then we developed our climate action priorities off of the assessment and then a climate action roadmap. Very quickly, we'll just talk about the priority areas that we have are focused on the left on emissions reduction. So we want to try to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to prevent worsening climate change. And on the right, we're emphasizing the resilience that's needed to address the issues that are going to happen no matter, right? So we know that the die is cast on certain things. We're going to get hotter. It's going to be drier. That's going to happen, unfortunately. So we need to be resilient against to deal with that. On the left, we're trying to make it less worse. So we want to try to reduce emissions. And so some of the things we're working on, we're trying to electrify as fast as we can. That's buildings, that's vehicles. You have 100% clean electricity goal. If everything's electric, in effect, it's carbon neutral. So we're trying to electrify. So that's our micro district, police micro district. Was one of our first all electric buildings within the city of Boise. We're electrifying our fleets. Those are our all-electric trash trucks. Say that fast. We have 5 now in the fleet. When they came online, they were the first in the nation for Republic Services, our franchise model. Other cities are now starting to integrate the trash trucks and will hopefully be up around 10 to 15 in the next couple of weeks. If you've seen them coming down the alleyways, it's creepy how quiet they are. It's like, is that a truck coming at me? Because I don't hear it. But we're excited and they're performing extremely well. They're coming back with about a 15 to 20% charge remaining, even in the wintertime when heat's on. We have the compost program I talked about, and we're expanding that. We're trying to get the grocery stores and institutional waste like hospitals, Boise State, to be part of the program. So we're expanding that program. Talked about the natural environment improvements on the Boise River. We also have the open space initiatives, wildly successful in Boise. That we're really excited about expanding. And then last but not least, I mentioned the pilot that we have out at Micron. We just got the equipment delivered. And it's some of the most advanced wastewater treatment technology in the world. And we're trying to pilot 5 different technologies to see what kind of combinations we could use to address not just today's concerns on water quality, but things like PFAS. If you've heard of PFAS and for other chemicals. We're going to be testing at this facility what technology can remove PFAS. And then how does that manifest itself in solids? So University of Idaho do some research on the brine management side.
So,
yeah.
in the chat, there's a note in the chat.
Oh.
We got something.
Thank you.
John will be on it.
John will be on it. There we go. So in the climate action roadmap, I won't get into the details of it, but it was a technical analysis to figure out how do you actually achieve carbon neutrality. And I'm here to tell you that it's going to be interesting. That dark gray box this is called a wedge diagram. It's basically taking our current emissions and what chunks get reduced over time to get us to carbon neutrality. And that bottom gray band is the advocacy, new technologies, carbon offsets, i.e. we don't know how we're going to solve those yet. Most cities, Boston, Boise, New York, all of us that are doing this work, we're comparing notes. Every city is coming to that same conclusion. About 15% is kind of like, don't know yet. And so when I give this presentation to high schoolers, we talk a lot about like, I need you guys engaged on these things because you're going to be the ones coming up with technology that's going to solve some of those issues there in the 10 to 15%. But these are the chunks that we're going to get to get to that carbon neutral goal. And then just some good news from 2020 to 2021. This is our most recent data in the community. Even with Boise growing, we're down 3% in that time frame from 2020 to 2021. That's really good news. A lot of it is relying on Idaho Power's resource mix, the energy they're providing to us.
Hello, everybody.
Oh,
It is now 4 o'clock and I will
That's our public works.
call to order this meeting of the Boise Public Works Commission.
are they in
Double
there?
booked.
Yeah, they're
Chambers.
To kick things off, I will start with calling the roll.
The irony.
If you're here, please indicate by saying aye. Commissioner Ellis,
Thank you.
or here, just let me know you're present. Commissioner Morgan,
they're right there. Think of that.
Oh,
Oh, there you go.
thanks.
Okay. So the emissions are driven by a fair amount out of our control. There are things that are in our control, but happy to report it's down 3%. But even better than that, on the city organization, our emissions as a city government was down. This should be 18%, actually, not 20%. It's actually 18%. And that's a credit to the staff who's been working really hard on those small incremental gains that get the progress made. It's kind of it can be a grind for them, but they're making really good progress. Okay, I want to move on to the Public Works Arts Master Plan. And I know you all are aware of some of these, so I won't belabor some of this. The percent for art ordinance, I probably don't need to belabor. You're probably all well aware of that. But that's going to be the majority of our funding source within Public Works. And I mentioned the big projects we have, just at Lander Street alone, we're gonna be spending 300 million. So you can run the numbers on a 1.4. Now, not all of it is eligible for the 1.4%. But it is going to be significant amount of money that we're going to be investing in public art. Thus, the master plan. We wanted to have something in place, knowing what was coming. Let's be very deliberate and thoughtful about what it is we want to focus on, how we can do it, what are some of the innovative approaches that we want. In the master plan, there were kind of some key objectives. I won't read those, but they're in the document. Part of it was to acknowledge the great work that had been done before I ever got here at the Boise watershed, for example. That is, I think, the highest concentration of public art in the state. It is a fabulous facility. This is not a time where I will be humble. It is really cool. If you haven't been out to the watershed, it's really a neat facility. And so much of that is the public art that's engaging the community when you're out there and looking at the way that data sets are interpreted in art. It's just really fascinating and interesting. So, but this is the plan. So we acknowledge what happened. We want to get that clear vision for the public art program moving forward, and then outlining those opportunities and the types of projects that can come out of the master plan potentially. And then this is just a layout of the contents. Again, I won't belabor this. We'll talk about it in a second. So I just wanted to share some observations, and I'd really like to open it up to the commission just to hear your perspectives if you have a chance to read through. A couple of things that when I think about Boise and where we are in our city's history, we're at a really interesting time in our city's history. We are big enough now to have to deal with certain problems, certain issues that an urban area has, whether it's traffic, whether it's homelessness. But those issues are not so big that they feel intractable. Like if you live in Los Angeles, have you ever driven on the 405? I don't know how you saw that. That's like, it's so big and difficult and challenging. We don't have, or the LA River, if you've seen the channelized LA River, LA County is talking about undoing that to the tune of dollars. It's basically a concrete channel now. They want to basically reestablish the river. We're fortunate that we haven't made any of those big major kind of things that we have to undo. At least maybe to my way of thinking. Some people may disagree with that. And again, those problems are big enough that we actually do need to start thinking about them, though. We can't, if we don't start getting ahead of it now, then we're going to be Phoenix, we're going to be Los Angeles. Those things will happen to us. And that's part of the modern zoning code that's, I don't want to get into tonight, but that's part of the vision that we have for our city is if we acknowledge we want to be Boise 30 years from now, we do have to do things differently. For us in public works, it's that circular economy. For the folks in planning, it's that modern zoning code. For the folks in art, there's, I'm sure, things that you're talking about, how you're going to be doing differently to make sure that Boise stays Boise. I think it's really important to acknowledge that communications on climate change have been awful over the last, say, 10 years, in my opinion. In part because we just keep framing this gloom and doom that is existential, but not relatable. So we show charts of CO2 concentrations going up. Okay, I don't know that I can change that. And if I'm a mom or dad with 2 jobs, 3 kids, I don't know that I care. You're not telling me something that gets me engaged in the issue and frames a way that I can actually address it. So resetting on how we communicate on climate is really important. The Arts Master Plan is an incredible opportunity for us to do that. And so as we start to think about the initial pieces that are going to go out, you know, where do we start? I'm so excited about the potential for resetting the dialogue around climate, because this doom and gloom, yes, I don't disagree. These things are awful that are happening, but in the end, we have to have some hope. And we, you know, it's a little hokey, but we talk about hopeful urgency at the city. We got to get moving, and we're making progress. But it's hopeful. Good things are going to come out of this. Really good things are going to come out of this, because it's going to force us to think about systems differently and break those systems down to reset into what we think will be better. That goes back to doing it differently in Boise. If we don't, we're going to be Phoenix. We're going to be Denver. And I would live in Phoenix if I wanted us to be Phoenix, right? I choose to be in Boise for what it is. We had, as part of the utility plan, we had some environmental documentation that we had to get approval for and send out information to some of the key stakeholders. Our consultant team shared with us that we need to send a letter to the tribes, letting them know what we're doing. And that just didn't feel right to me. And so I worked with Tilly to try to set up a meeting with the tribes to talk about what our plan is and be respectful of the fact that we are doing this on their land. So we set up the meeting. Thank you for doing that. It was a really impactful meeting for me because the interaction that we had with them, they talk about things, planning for 7 generations. Like they asked me, well, how long is the plan for us? And I'm like, 20 years, like, wow. And they're like, yeah, we plan for 7.
So, a funny story about that meeting. So we were meeting in a building that was over by the river. Like the old Orlando thing. And we're having this meeting, Steve is presented, we're having a discussion, and a duck flies into the window and hits the window. And
Huge
falls.
stud, yeah.
And we all like stopped to figure out what that was, and then they made like a really dry comment, they're like, well, you put the building in the wrong spot. You're writing their flight plan, and it was like this message that was basically about exactly what we were talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, and it was just kind of prophetic. It's just a wry comment, but it's like, that's what they, and so then it led to a conversation about, and I have this, and like, it's seared in my memory because it's just so profound. One of the tribal members said, what I would ask you, it's like, we've talked about times, like, I guess what I want you to think about is, instead of thinking what the resource can provide to you, what can you provide to the resource? And that sounds like a simple statement, but it's really profound when we start thinking about what we do as a city. We take, right? We use the water, we use the open space, we use, and it goes back to that linear metabolism. But if you're willing to think differently about how these systems interact and how do you give back, it starts to get into that regeneration mindset. Can buildings produce energy instead of just sucking energy, right? We have a building at our farm that's a net positive building. It's giving, it's not just a user. So, and I'll just close with this. The Terry Shoresman, when she was here, she talked about the past being prologue. And one of the things that we've done in Public Works, this is that Lander Street facility that I was talking about. This was built in 1947. I don't know if folks know the story. I think you know the story behind how this got built. The League of Women Voters in Boise basically rallied the community around this idea of a wastewater treatment plant. This is, the Clean Water Act did not pass until 1972. This is way ahead of its time. And that we have a copy of the letter they sent out. It's like, it's time for Boise to step up and stop the cholera outbreaks and the dysentery in the Boise River. And so those women and this community built this facility in 1949. It was completed. That generation stepped up to meet a demand. Nobody's telling them they had to do it. It was our community has a value. This community has values unlike other cities. We put things to votes and they tell us, I will pay more for that open space. Charge me. I value that. Our bond election that we had back in 2021, 81% said, yes, I want the Boise River protected and I want to invest in this industry. So this community expects us as city leaders to be the in the time frame it's when it's our generation's turn, they expect us to say. And I'm excited about what we're going to be doing. It's not easy, but these are we think the right things to do. And the Arts Master Plan is an opportunity to frame what we do, as well as engage on what needs to get done into the future, whether it's carbon neutrality, whether it's recycling, whatever. So I'll leave it there and maybe open up the comments, questions from the commission, concerns about what you saw in the plan or comments on it. Yes.
I have one question, and this is personal, because I fight people on it. And that was wonderful, Steve. Thank you very much. Glass. How are we recycling glass? Because I take it down to the bins, you know, once a month. But there are some people that tell me it doesn't go anywhere.
You'll be, next conversation you have with those people, you can educate them on what happens with glass. So we take, glass is really difficult to deal with. It's very heavy and there aren't a lot of places to take it. The recycling centers don't like glass because it breaks and it gets into all the gears of processing. They'll do anything not to have glass in this facility. We take our glass to a company called Enviro, all of our glass to Enviro Abrasives. They take that glass, they make specific abrasive material to meet very like the federal government. If you're doing, let's say you're sandblasting a bridge over the Lochsaw River, a very sensitive water body, you have to have a non-silica based abrasive material. This company is marketing that to construction companies. So all of our glass goes to Enviro Abrasives. Basically reinvented, going back to that circular, is reinvented and used for a different product. So no, it does not go to the big glass pile in the desert. It's a contract that we have with Enviro Abrasives, and it's a really elegant solution that a lot of cities, I think, wish they understand.
Thank you.
I think Gabby had her hand up, and welcome, John.
I'm so sorry. I actually don't have a question. My computer just kicked me off and I was able to hop back on and listen, but I wasn't a panelist, so I just wanted to draw attention. Thank you guys. That was a great presentation though, and I'm very energized to see what you guys are working on and what's in the plans.
Thank you.
I also have a plan. So you know how much I love you providing the president photos, what I can do to let myself in space. So I love all of that. I love how you organize it with air, energy, water, totally, like, I'm so on board. Love adding composting and recycling to the art collection as a topic. And then I wanted to point out page 19, which has the room for improvement areas, which I so agree with. Just, you know, engaging adults in the process, the geothermal system needs visibility, history of the geothermal system needs visibility. It would be so cool, like there's like a walking path over downtown, so you can point out the buildings being used for, or the buildings that used to be used for, and connect it to the net and all that. So much opportunity there. And the other thing I'm gonna say is I had no idea about the League of Women Voters story. And so as we're working on art for that facility, I would love to see that story. If I'm sure that's part of the plan, but
Yeah, we have Jennifer has an idea for, we want to have potentially a kiosk along the green belt and have kind of view sheds into the facility. It's just like going back to, we used to like to be hidden and nobody talking about us. We'd like people to know what it is, what we do there. And it'd be really cool to acknowledge the history of the facility. There's a really great Art Deco, original Art Deco building. It's actually pretty wastewater treatment plant. You never think it's actually really neat. We're still preserving that. And that could be an entree. We'll have to think about how best we do that. But we want to tell this. And then the geothermal, real quick. So interesting you say that. We had a geothermal design sprint. It was a Bloomberg Philanthropies has a process that they use just to kind of, if you're looking to innovate in some sector, they come in and they can facilitate a design sprint. So we did it for geothermal. The number one recommendation, well, besides hot springs, was you guys need to get visibility on this thing. An art piece, something that lets people know that this is downtown. So we've talked about, like, could you just have a loop that comes up and out of the ground? You could feel the pipe and the heat. I don't know. We're gonna think of something, but that's funny that you say that because people just don't know about it. And, like, we should be geothermal city USA.
yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I was also thinking, so we'll be making history with the city's commitment to clean energy. So I hope that we have an out year looks plan at documenting that in art, the groundbreaking, precedent that we're setting, the way that we did it, commemorating, kind of like the first area to be a part of it, and maybe the last place to be a part of it has some kind of commemoration associated with it.
Cool idea.
Is there a word for meeting that? Forethought. Forethought. There you go.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to say ditto what you said about the League of, women voters, because that's what I was thinking. But also, I want to say, I appreciate you guys meeting with the tribes. I think that's very important. I'm glad that we continue to do that here within this commission, because I think it's super important that we remember them when we're doing any kind of decision making.
And they've been wonderful. Tilly has I think, a very good relationship with them. And we've tried to leverage that. So we've had some of the tribal youth come up. We sponsored the buses to get them up to the watershed for a day of education. We're thinking about different ways to partner with them on climate education. We have the watershed was one of the first, I think it was in the first class of the NASA Earth to Sky program, which is basically a train the trainer on climate education. So Augie Gabrielli out the watershed was the first class to do that. So that information we're trying to share, like figure out how do we share that with the tribes so they can be part of it. And then we're also trying to include them in I forgot to mention the redesign of the watershed. We're turning it into a water and climate science center. So we're going to be remodeling the facility. And we want to have some piece in the upfront about the tribes and their perspective on water and climate. So we're working with them on trying to get them engaged on what could help. Questions?
Stephanie, you're in the process of hiring for that position that closes today.
Yeah, we've got interviews set up for Friday.
Cool.
So it's the Public Works Art Coordinator.
Good.
Really excited about that. Yes.
A little comment on geothermal. I don't recall who it was that put on a tour and talked about how they're actually finding secondary uses for geothermal. So they're making it even more useful within the existing system. They're rerouting after they use water hot, they're using warm, Yeah,
Yes,
it's pretty interesting.
The Oahe was, when they redeveloped the Oahe, they wanted to try to maximize use of geothermal. So they use geothermal water for sidewalk snow melt. So they routed,
Nice.
like they use it once, it's a lower temperature, and then they use it in the sidewalk, took more energy off of it. And then to your point, though, a building typically takes about 60 degrees of heat off the water. So it goes from about 180 to 120. That 120 still has energy
Right.
to offer.
Right.
And so we're starting to sell that 120 water to folks at a rebate price, a lower price. Further, so it's like renewing the renewable thing. So it's an interesting.
I may make a comment. I want to applaud Steve and his staff. They were really wonderful to work with, and your enthusiasm for doing things that have not been done before. It's greatly appreciated. I wanted to note that this is also a really great opportunity to partner with other departments. With doing something at the airport, for instance, or yesterday I met the new urban designer in planning and development services, and she was talking about how she's looking at all kind of the systems and design related aspects of the city. So the unusual thing is in pivoting from art at the watershed to art in the city, we don't have a facility that we're designing for. So part of what's different about this plan and what will happen in the next 20 years with public art, with public works, is that we'll be either partnering with existing city facilities like parks, libraries, or the airport, or partner facilities that aren't ours, like ACHD, landing medians, or other private partners or other public agencies as sites to put the public art. And so this is really going to ask of us to identify our stakeholders and identify other large-scale projects like Design Boise to understand how public works could amplify public works messages in the context of these other initiatives as well.
Yeah, and I'd say right back at arts and history, but our working relationship, you wouldn't think engineers and scientists and artists, stereotypically could we work together? And I think there's an authenticity in both our work, right? There's like, a pipeline it's got to be doing what it's supposed to do. There's an authenticity to that, just like art is inherently authentic. It is whatever the artist wanted to accomplish and the message they were sending. So that, I think there's a connection there on authenticity, which is kind of something that I think we've honed and connected on.
John, did you want to say anything? Are you back to running the meeting?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. My bad. Just another time change. Yeah, I only caught the last part of it. It all sounds super exciting to me, so I'll look forward to watching this recording at a later date. So thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for coming, Steve.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck at your other commission.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, she's another great partner too, because we have a loop, the geothermal loop that goes with Boise State.
Okay, so should we move on with our agenda, Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, keeping an eye on the clock. So the next thing on the agenda is to review the minutes and vote on approval. So I don't know if anyone wants to make a motion about the minutes from our last meeting.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Motioned and a seconded. All in favor?
Bye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. All right, so Jennifer, I think that you're up for a little update.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that we have Councilwoman Clegg with us today. She stepped in a little bit after the meeting started. And I also want to acknowledge we have a member of the public with us today, which we're really hoping to encourage. That's part of the reason we're changing the meeting time to 5 o'clock, both to accommodate our commissioners as well as to accommodate people who really want to be engaged. So we're thrilled that you're here. Thank you for your interest and participation. And hope to see you again in the future. So as the commission, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to update you on some of the things that have been happening in the department, but also for your willingness to entertain some of the shifts that I hope that we're going to make in the commission, starting with the time change, but also with sort of some changes to the memos that are going to be coming your way in your packets regularly, as well as these things called director's updates. So one of the things we're trying to do is to align with how the other commissions across the city operate. And I have, of course, been on a couple of those commissions, but also had the opportunity to go to the Airport Commission as we were presenting the airport plan, or that Tilly was presenting the Airport Arts Master Plan. And then also the Public Works Commission is currently undergoing some changes as well. So Jillian, our executive assistant, met with some folks over in Public Works to talk about what they're doing with their commission as well. So I just appreciate everybody's openness to some of those changes. I know that you're all very enthusiastic and anxious to provide service, and we're so grateful for the service that you do provide. So I appreciate the working relationship to make some of these changes so that you guys have the opportunities you want, and that the department can utilize all of your incredible talents to the best of our ability. So I just want to let you know that we have been, Tilly and I have been working pretty steadily with Tyler, with the legal department, on revising the percent for art ordinance. And you may all know already that the ordinance is now about 23 years old. And there are so many opportunities to sort of bring it up to some modern standards and to do some new things with it. So we're really excited about that. The opportunities really are revolve around the 4 points on this slide. So number one, clarifying the language around the 1.4%. and making funding more predictable. It hasn't been necessarily tracked as consistently as it should be over the years, and we're hoping to, with the language changes, to make that funding more predictable and make sure that the consistency is not just in the general fund, but also across our airport and our public works funds. And now that we have those two, well, we have the Public Works Master Plan passed and adopted by council. Our airport plan is coming up for that. And so with those, we want to make sure that the ordinance is in line with those and gives us the predictable funding we need to implement those plans. We also want to align the ordinance with current department mission and operations. And what I mean by that is that the ordinance itself was passed before we became the Department of Arts and History. And so we want to make sure that the spending that's permitted in that ordinance allows for spending not just on public art, but also on things like artifacts, archives, and that sort of thing. So we want to bring that up to date and also accommodate the fact that the public art world has changed pretty dramatically since the ordinance went into effect, in the sense that there are now a lot of temporary art installations. Even our traffic boxes are really considered temporary. And so we want to make sure that the ordinance permits spending on that overtly. So those things, and that goes to this third one here, broadening the public art definition. And then finally, we want to really make sure that we're updating and making sure that our procedural language is clear. And that really relates to the maintenance funding that we're trying to do. So I'm going to go to the next slide here, I think. Yeah. So there's a lot of words on the slide. I just mostly want to draw your attention to the places where those arrows are. So right now, the way the ordinance is written, we permit expenditures on education, project management, planning, and maintenance, in addition to public art. But really, it's only the 1% that of that 1.4 that is calculated in our capital expenditures. And the 0.4 is a little on the fuzzy side. And it says in the ordinance, the way it's written today, it says that maintenance is going to be part of the budget process, but it doesn't really, that hasn't really happened over time. And it's supposed to be calculated as part of the 0.4, but it's also supposed to be in the budget process. And that just hasn't been clear. And again, it hasn't been consistent. So what we're doing is we're pulling education, project management, planning out and making it part of the calculation. And I'm going to show you on this next slide. That's going to bring the number up to 1.2 that actually is subject to the calculation. And then we're yanking maintenance out entirely and actually making that part of the annual budget process. So what that ultimately looks like is an actual decrease in the percent for our ordinance. So whereas today it's 1.4%, we're actually bringing that down to 1.2%. And instead of the planning, education, project management being subject to that sort of fluffy up to 0.4%, we're making it a flat 0.2. So it brings the entire calculation up to, again, 1.2. And then just the maintenance alone will be part of the budget process. So I probably need to work a little bit more on my language about that because it's a little bit hard to explain, but I'm hoping that with the slides, hang on, it's going the wrong direction. Between this slide, which shows sort of what the current ordinance does versus the updated ordinance, and then this slide, which really gives you that graphic representation of the dollars, you can see what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to pause there for a quick second and see if the commission has any questions about that particular point.
Jennifer,
Yes.
I would ask the commission, are you comfortable that the city council is going to be supportive enough that the maintenance is actually going to get budgeted? Because that's really the chance that this change is taking, is that the city council is going to remain supportive and that support will ensure that whatever maintenance money is needed is budgeted. And frankly, it will be some years much more than the 0.4%. And other years it might be less, depending on what the needs are. But regardless of that, it will only happen if the city council remains committed to it. I think that you should be confident, but I just wanted to daylight that this change to me, that's the opportunity and so the cost of it, if you will.
Thank you, Councilwoman Clegg. And let me piggyback off of that by saying that one of the things that we're doing with this change is working with our care and conservation staff in this moment. That's Elagio. We'll be adding to that on May 15th. But Elagio's been working really hard on a 5-year maintenance plan so that those dollars are predictable. And so that council and our budget office knows what's coming on a 5-year cycle. And that's part of what the ask was from the budget office by making this change was, you can count on us. And we hope our elected leaders to always fund the maintenance of city's assets, right? So our art and our signage and those sorts of things should be treated no differently than, say, our fire stations or our whatever, right? That's another asset of the city. But in return, they asked us, and the mayor has asked us to come up with a 5-year maintenance plan so that those costs are predictable and there aren't a lot of swings. Now, of course, there are going to be years when a truck backs into one of our pieces of art, right? And that's an unpredictable thing that we can't do anything about. But the regular ongoing maintenance, the paint that needs to be done, the electrical that needs to be fixed, all those different things, those are predictable, and we can do the regular ongoing maintenance in a way that hopefully will prevent the big expenditures that have been in the past unpredictable. So, John, is there anybody on the on Zoom that has any questions or wants to respond to Councilwoman Clegg's concerns or questions prompting?
Yeah, this is John, and I appreciate the approach, and that, so this is all about predictability and bringing clarity. And so I would, as we move forward with the plan and be able to, make sure that fits in from the city's overall budget. It makes sense to me. I know we're not, this is a strategy at this point that we're working on. And I am personally supportive of the approach and look forward to, getting more communication and more details as it unfolds.
Okay, if there's no other questions, of course, you can always ask questions later if you want to. I'll move on. So I wanted to give you a quick update on the archives. And I know this is, our commission is very focused on the arts, but this is a really important part of the department's mission, of course. And we are talking right now, we're in conversation, Danielle, our city archivist, and I have been working closely with the city clerk's office to make sure that our policies and procedures and retention schedules are aligned. And this has been a really important step for our department. There's been so much transition over the last couple of years and turnover with COVID and those sorts of things that it was really important that now that we are staffed up and, Danielle has been here about 18 months now, that we brought those two teams together to make sure that, for instance, when destruction of records was happening over at the city clerk's office, that those destruction schedules were coming to our archivists to make sure we weren't destroying records that were important to the city system. And so as part of that, we are actually exploring the possibility of merging with the record center into a single space. That may or may not happen in the next 5 years, but we are currently exploring that. We're looking at some space with the mayor's real estate manager, and we are hoping that we can be together in a single space. It certainly makes the most sense from a public facing standpoint. It will permit the public to have more opportunity. We hope to be able to come and actually use the historical records that they want access to. We hope and expect that it will cut down on public records costs as well. There's actually space for the public to come and do research. And it would also allow a much cleaner flow of materials when they get past the records retention part, active records, is what the group calls them, and get moved to the archives. There's actually a physical benefit of having them in the same space. So we really, I'm very hopeful that we may find a space and do move before 5 years from now. The reason I bring up 5 years is because hopefully in about 5 years, there is an airport campus plan that needs a space for the record center and the archives to be together. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. 5 years is on the early side, but it's a possibility that it could be that soon. And we're working with facilities to with them and with their strategy, strategic planning, is of course then in turn mayor's office to determine what that order of operations is going to be. But we could be on the earlier end. So in any case, I just want to make sure the commission is aware of that and knew about that. I also wanted to just update you on some exciting things happening at CCDC. So as you all know, because I've mentioned it to you before, it was made clear to me early on in my tenure that working on this relationship in the urban renewal districts was a very high priority for the mayor and council. In part, that's because there are 2 urban renewal districts that are sunsetting in the next couple of years. And so the way urban renewal districts work is that toward the end of their life, they actually have the most amount to spend. And if anybody's interested in talking about that, we definitely do that offline. But what it means is that because these districts are now sunsetting, meaning they're coming to the end of their life, they have dollars now finally to put some public spaces. And so we have been focusing very hard on getting the agreements signed between the city of Boise and the Capital City Development Corporation, so that cooperation and agreement can take place in person instead of to be commissioned. And so we have 4 what are called T4 agreements, which is just the type of agreement that CCDC calls the work that we're doing with them. 2 of them are going to be in the old Boise Blocks area. There's going to be a piece of art near the CW Moore Park on Grove Street between 4th and 5th Street. There's going to be a logo that's going to be sort of provide a unity to the neighborhood that's going to be designed by an artist. So you all will of course be hearing about these things over the next couple of months. And then there's another piece of going to be at 521 West Grove Street public space. So if you've been down on Grove Street near the Bass Block area anytime recently, this is the parcel literally immediately across the street. Bass Center. And so there is right now, the city is deeply in conversation with CCDC on designing that space. So Parks is involved, but also our public art managers, Stephanie and the assistant Donna, have been deeply engaged in that whole process of design and expect to be putting a call for artists on next month. So we're super excited about these things. It's going to be a big budget item. It's going to be a statement. We also have more funding coming from CCDC for additional art and some historical and signage at the Irma Heyman House. So that's exciting. And then there's also going to be a new agreement for the linen blocks. So those are the blocks on the west end of Grove Street between about 10th and 17th Streets. So exciting things happening there. We've had to put a lot of the foundational work in place to make sure that those call for artists can go out. But we're nearing the end of that. We're getting to the point where all those agreements are going to be in place. City Council has another one on their agenda this Tuesday, and there should be 2 more in the next 2 months. So we're really excited about that. And I appreciate all the people on staff in this room who've been working on that with me, including legal. And then finally, this actually just in the last 2 hours has changed. Tilly will be presenting the Airport Master Arts Plan to City Council actually next Tuesday. I unfortunately am going to be out of town at a conference, but the Chief of Staff is pleased to have Tilly coming and doing the presentation. The airport director will be there as well, and we're looking forward, we hope, to City Council's approval next Tuesday. So please tune into that if you have the opportunity. we're looking forward to that presentation. We've also been doing a fairly significant reorganization of the arts and history physical space. So you'll see if you come down right now that there are a lot of boxes and a lot of things piled up. And that's because there's a first floor remodel that kicked this whole thing off. And also, again, the mayor's office asked us to do sort of some cleaning up of the space. It had been quite a number of years since that had happened. So if you go down right now, it's a bit of a mess, but it's all toward a positive end. And then finally, now that we are almost fully staffed up, we are having our first team offsite since I've been here on April 17th, doing some team building and doing some work toward talking about our mission and our goals. So that concludes my director's update. I'll stop there before we go into just some comments and some just brief discussion on this little thing and see if you all have any questions or comments you can ask.
Jennifer, it's John. I have a comment, and the comment is, this is, I think, very helpful. I think this is this type of update will help all of us, and I just appreciate the effort going into it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else? Otherwise, I guess you can move on there, Jennifer.
Great. Before I launch into a conversation about the boards and commission and committees document, I just want to welcome our new staff, Mackenzie Lawrence, who is here for the first time at one of our commission meetings. She is working under Kristen Hill in the cultural site staff, and she is working out at the James Castle House. She comes with a pretty amazing background in museum studies. She actually worked at the Chihuly Museum, did I say it right? Yes. In Seattle, but also at the Louvre in Paris, and has some really fascinating background, both in business as well as in museum and arts. So we're thrilled to have her here. And then Elagio's counterpart, Jamil Shirley, comes to us on May 15th. She will be joining us at the offsite on April 17th, but then won't be starting full time until May 15th. And she also comes with a really fascinating background, most recently at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. So she's moving here from Washington, DC. We're really excited about that. We hope to have the Grants and Public Programs Manager hired in the next month or so, fingers crossed. That's been a bit of a push for reasons I won't go into here. You heard that we close on the Public Work Arts Coordinator today, and we'll be starting interviews on Friday. And then the Airport Public Art Projects Coordinator we're asking for with the airport for fiscal year 24. So fingers crossed on that. There's a comment. And then we're gonna wait on this, right? Oh, there's a question. Great, thank you.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome, Mackenzie and Jamil, says Chris. Okay, so I'm gonna actually come back to events at the end of the commission meeting, right? And move on to, how do I pull up the? Did you want to do it?
You have the welcome email?
Yep. Okay. Or that, yes. So before we play it, so hopefully you all saw this document that was sent out in your agenda. This was a document that the mayor's office sent out to basically welcome. So we're just going to play a quick video. It's just a minute long. It's going to make it sound like you're all new commissioners, which of course none of you are. But it gives a nice overview of what the mayor is trying to do with the commissions. And again, this goes to sort of the alignment that we're trying to do across arts and history as well as the other commissions. So I'm just going to let the video play, and then we'll talk for just a minute or two about the document and see if you guys have any questions.
I am not hearing it on my end. Are you John or Chris?
I'm not either.
Okay. Oh, and Amanda, I didn't see you before. Sorry.
Okay, you guys aren't hearing the video? I will. Okay, well, you know what? don't even know. Okay, I'm not quite sure what to do. It's only a minute long, so we'll be sure to send out the link, but let me just finish playing it now and then we'll be sure to send the link at the end of the meeting. Okay. Okay. Pretty basic. So with that, I just wanted to ask if anybody had any questions about the document that was sent out. And if not, I'll launch into it. Just a couple things I wanted to point out on it. I lost it. Okay. So I thought this was really helpful. Having sat on a couple of commissions, like I told you, we didn't used to have something like this. So it was really, I thought it was incredibly valuable that this document was put out. And I think especially in light of the presentation we just had by Director Steve Burgos, I think it's really valuable to look at city strategic goals. And as we think about the art commissions that we're going to be doing over the next couple of years, I think these are the ones that are most important to find. So a safe and healthy city for everyone, a home for everyone, movement for everyone, opportunity for everyone, a clean city for everyone, and engaging everyone. And I think, you know, I go back to this again that we have a member of the public with us today, that we fiercely seek opportunities for collaboration, remaining accessible and transparent, and building on our residents' passion for Boise and desire to shape their future. And I think, you know, if we keep these city strategic things in mind, I think it's going to be valuable for us as we consider the art pieces and the rest of the work that we're doing. There's a section in here called "You've been appointed, now what?" that I'm not going to read to you. You guys are all good readers. But I think it's valuable to look at this. There's a list here that they are put down that says effective board members do these things. And as we're trying to sort of, again, get in line with you guys are all amazing. There's not going to be any issues here, but I think it's just helpful to review what's written here. So I just asked that you do that. And then I know that we do have elections, right, John? At some point, there's a rotation of elections. And so I think that, you know, as we think about that, it's actually valuable because there's things in here about chair roles and responsibilities. So when and if the chairmanship ever rolls over, I think it's valuable to just have that written down and know what those responsibilities are. So those are really the only things I wanted to point out about the document. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to review it and had any questions or want to talk about it amongst yourselves, but that was more or less it.
I'm so sorry. Was this mailed to us or emailed?
It would have been emailed.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've totally missed it, but I will find it.
And it's not urgent or anything. It just is a handbook that the mayor's office put together for people who serve on boards and commissions. So
very cool. Thank you.
Cool. Of course.
And Jennifer, in terms of changes coming to our meeting specifically, you mentioned that you're still thinking about it. Is there anything else you want to tell us about now? I mean, I think I know that we were talking about 5. I think I missed the announcement that we are officially doing that. So maybe just help my memory a little bit.
Yes, of course. My apologies, Commissioner Tom, if I.
No, I have 2 small children. I have a terrible memory. So you could have told me this yesterday and I would.
Right. So yes, we did make a decision to move to 5 o'clock starting in May.
Okay.
And again, the reason for doing that is in part to accommodate professionals who are our volunteers who have other obligations from, you know, during normal work hours or what are traditional work hours, I should say. And then also to accommodate the public. We really want to encourage the public being involved in what our department and what the commission is doing. And so that's in part the reason for that. With regard to other changes, one of the things that actually, and if I misspeak, Jillian, who has actually spoken with the Public Works folks, let me know. But one of the things that Public Works is doing with their commission is creating committees, which is a little similar to the liaison work that you all adopted a few months ago. And so, for instance, Public Works Commission is interested in forming an arts committee that would be one of the volunteers on our commission would also sit on, so that there would be some crossover work that could happen. So we're still exploring what that would look like. And of course, we would come to you first before, I mean, you know, before we make any decisions along those lines. But that's something we're thinking about. And then the other thing that hopefully you may have noticed this time around, and you will notice going forward in the future, we really tried to streamline what your memos look like, so that they can be predictable, that our staff can know exactly what they're supposed to put in those each month. And that there's no guessing game as to, you know, what's expected of, or what we're asking of you as commissioners. And so that's sort of the format we're going to, is there's going to be 3 key sections. They're going to look exactly like what you saw this time around. Those are really the only main, at this point, the main things. And, you know, I told John, I'm sort of getting to the point now where I can turn my attention to the commission and sort of help you guys be engaged the way I know you want to be. And so I'm finally at the point where I can do that. And right now it's not so substantive. It's a little more procedural.
Sure.
But I think we'll
Okay.
get to the substance.
That was my question primarily. It's like, hey, I'm great switching to 5, but what else is going on? Yep. So, okay, cool. Yep. Very supportive.
Yeah, so Jennifer, I don't know if it would be an appropriate time to just talk briefly about the communications and what we talked about, as far as maybe highlighting a few of the most important you know, community events or activities that we want to have the commission focused on, and some of the communication work with Jennifer Y.
Absolutely. So I don't know that we've ironed it all out yet, Mr. Chair, but we definitely have decided that at the end of each meeting, and we're going to get there here in just a minute, that we are going to go over the upcoming events and ask for people to commit to going to them if they can. And that way, you know exactly what we are sort of focused on, and we can get representation from you on that. So Jennifer, I know you're on Zoom. Do you want to add anything to that? Oh, are you allowed to? There, allowed you? Nope.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if you have a visual or not. So yes. So part of Commissioner Ashley's request, I believe in December, was that we be more proactive in engaging members of the commission in major programs and events. And so we've started actively adding you to the events in Outlook. So if, again, if you see those, please feel free to accept them and or opt out. They typically show up as free. So they shouldn't cloud your calendar. They should only complement and act as, you know, create awareness, but certainly should not be clouding your calendar. And then again, we are sending the weekly update, which typically includes city-sponsored events, grant recipient events, and events related to the cultural ambassador, which for the through the end of the fiscal year is Boise Contemporary Theater. If there are other ways we can actively engage members of the commission in our work and the work of our grant recipients and our cultural ambassador, I'd love to hear from you and see you out in the community.
I have really appreciated and loved getting the calendar invites. That has just been really awesome. Thank you guys for implementing that and sharing those with us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ashley, for the suggestion. We really appreciate it. And I'm glad it's working.
Thanks again, Jennifer. It's been really helpful.
My pleasure. Thank you. With that, I think Jennifer Stevens, you have a slide with our upcoming events. Hopefully, I'm not putting you on the spot, but it might be a good segue.
I was just about to ask the chair if it was, if he was ready for me to do that.
Ready.
Thank you.
Share, rest of shares. This should be shared right now. Or. Thank you. Apparently I can't multitask. Okay. So this Friday, I'm gonna bring attention to something that's actually not on this slide. We have our final presentation by our current resident at the James Castle House, Maria Micharina. Her work is amazing. And in fact, there was a Creators, Makers, Doers blog that went out today that featured her really inspirational interview. She is a Russian immigrant and she has spent the last 6 weeks at the Castle House, 8 weeks. And she has been incredibly prolific. So I strongly urge you to attend. It's going to be both an in-person event as well as available online. So strongly recommend you registering for that and attending. And then the final Inside the Studio with her will also be this coming weekend, and that'll be on Saturday. So if you haven't had the chance to go over there yet and see her work, please do. Another really exciting thing that has happened just in the last week or so is the opening of the Americans in the Holocaust exhibit. So this is a national exhibition that is being presented right now at the Boise State Albertsons Library. But in addition to the national exhibit that's being put on by the Holocaust Museum, the one that's in DC, our archivist, Danielle, has put a local exhibit together with one of our collections, the Congregation Avahat Beth Israel, and it highlights the local history of the Jewish community here in Boise. And so in addition to having this amazing national traveling exhibition that's on display right now, we have a local piece of this as well. So I really strongly urge you to go over there. I would be happy to take commissioners and go with you on a field trip if you're interested in doing that. Would love to go over there as a group. So if you are interested in doing that, maybe I'll send out an email and see if you'd like to. And then we have some grantees events going on as well. So we already missed the April 1st one. Hopefully everybody, I know Tilly went. Can you go, Tilly? Yeah. Yep. We also have April 19th to May 6th. Our cultural ambassador, BCT, is putting on the Christians. And that will be, I think they're usually at 7 o'clock on the weekdays and 8 o'clock on the weekends. April 29th is the James Castle House 5th anniversary. For those of you who've been around a while, it's hard to believe, but 5 years. So please come. It's going to be an exciting celebration. I believe it's from 1 to 4. That's on a Saturday. Very excited about that. May 1st, there's going to be a 5x5 reading series. And Jennifer, I don't know, hopefully you can still hop on here, but are we having any, are we going to have any library participation with this particular reading series like we did with the last one?
So the children's reading series completed its season back in March. And so the idea, our counterparts at Boise Contemporary Theater were thrilled with the opportunity to present this series at the library. So both at Hillcrest, excuse me, and at Bound Crossing. And the idea is to pursue this next season. So, but they're taking their season ends in May and will resume probably in September. So we will see if we can do this next year.
Okay, so the one on May 1st is an adult reading series, not a children's one.
Oh, excuse me, 5x5 reading series. That's a grant. So that is through our Arts and History grant program. So they're grant recipients for the 5x5 reading series.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So then if there's one more that's not on there, the Chinese dancers are performing this Saturday night at the Special Event Center at the issue from 7 to 8.
Okay, 7 to 8, Special Event Center at Boise State, Chinese dancers, also another grantee.
May I add
And,
a-
oh, go ahead, first.
Just a couple more. This first Thursday is a big one. Grant recipient Downtown Boise Association has commissioned several artists that will provide roving performances in downtown Boise as part of First Thursday. So it's supersized First Thursday. So but from 5 to 9. And then we are partnering with Capital City Development Corporation and our friends in Parks and Recreation in an 521 West Grove Street Public Space Open House on the corner of 6th and Grove Street, adjacent to the Lucy Apartments, if you're familiar with them. And we are inviting members of the public to provide feedback on initial design concepts for that public space. And that's between 4 and 7 on April 6th.
So, hopefully we will see you at some of those events. Jillian reminded me that we are not going to do specific asks until next time around, correct? But hope that you will attend some or all of these events. And that's it for the director's update, John. So I'll stop screen sharing unless you have anything else on the slides that you were interested in talking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
I do want to thank Jillian for her update on the Anne Frank on the mural over at the memorial. So it sounded like that's, I think, May 15th as well. So thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, then I again apologize for my adopting the 5 p.m. Meeting time a month early, and we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting then. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn, Tyler. Too late.
I make a motion to end. Close.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, guys. Bye.